The old saloon creaked with every sound, its wooden floors worn from years of late nights and laughter. Dust hung in the air like memories, each swirl catching the flickering light of the oil lamps. At the far end, a woman named Clara bent low, sweeping the floor with a steady rhythm. Her hair, dark and pulled back tightly, glinted in the light. The saloon was her world, and with each swish of the broom, she felt a sense of calm amid the chaos. Outside, the sun dipped low, casting shadows that danced across the town square. Clara paused for a moment, breathing in the musty scent of the saloon. It was a hard life, but it was her life filled with the clinks of whiskey glasses, boisterous laughter, and the occasional fight that threatened to break out. She had seen things most people couldn't imagine. Yet as she swept the floor, she found solace in the mundane, drowned out the noise of the outside world, and lost herself in the rhythm. That night the saloon was buzzing with energy. The piano played a lively tune, and men in dusty hats gathered around tables, swapping tall tales over drinks. Clara continued to sweep, her movements practiced and automatic. She noticed a group of men playing cards, their faces lit with excitement. Yet it was her attention that fell on one man in particular, a figure dressed in a worn sheriff's uniform, his gaze sharp and searching as he moved through the crowd. Sheriff James Riley was tall, with broad shoulders and a presence that commanded respect. His blue eyes sparkled with mischief, but there was something serious about him, an air of responsibility that hung around him like a heavy cloak. Clara had seen him around town, always patrolling, always aware. Yet tonight, there was a different look in his eye as he watched the room. It was as if he found something in the chaos that pulled him closer. As she swept near the bar, he caught her eye, a smile breaking through his serious demeanor. Clara held her breath, feeling a flicker of something. Was it excitement, fear? For a fleeting moment she couldn't tell. Just then he approached her, brushing the dust off his coat. He asked, his voice deep and inviting. Clara's heart raced. She had never been asked to leave her duties, especially not by the town's respected sheriff. She paused, unsure of what to say. She replied, trying to keep her voice steady. He chuckled softly, a sound that seemed out of place amid the raucousness of the saloon. "I need a partner for a dance," he said, nodding toward the piano player. Clara glanced over to the other side of the room. The dance floor, usually filled with laughter and movement, was now begging for life. The temptation in James's eyes was hard to resist. Clara's heart raced again, the thrill of the moment coursing through her. What was it about him that stirred something deep within her? Clara had always felt the yearning for something more than sweeping floors and serving drinks. This invitation felt like a window opening to a world she longed to see. With a hesitant smile, she replied, "All right." As she took his hand, she felt a surge of warmth. The sound of the piano swelled, and the room quieted just enough for the two of them to find their rhythm. Clara was not a dancer, and yet there was a grace in his movements that made it easy to follow. He pulled her close, and for the first time she felt seen beyond the chores she did. The crowd faded away, and the world shrank to just the two of them. The music flowed through her, igniting sparks of joy and echoing her heartbeat in perfect harmony. Laughter erupted from the crowd, but Clara barely noticed. In that moment, every worry, every fear slipped away. When she looked up into James's eyes, she saw something there, something deep and understanding. Was it merely a dance, or was it a promise of something more? As the song continued, she could feel the pressure of eyes watching them, whispers flitting through the air. And yet, the only focus that mattered was the connection she felt with him, an electric charge like nothing she had ever experienced before. Then the music began to slow, and reality shifted back in. Clara felt herself retreating, the saloon walls crowding in again. She stepped away, not wanting to break the magic, but knowing this moment couldn't last. "Thank you," she whispered, looking down, suddenly shy. James smiled, looking at her with admiration. "You have a way about you, Clara," and just like that, the spell began to fade. She turned back toward her broom, her heart still racing but her practical mind taking over. But the night wasn't done with Clara yet. As whiskey flowed and stories were told, it wasn't long before a ruckus started near the card table, the kind that meant trouble was brewing. Clara's heart sank. She rushed to the window, her instinct kicking in. Through the dim light, she saw two men standing, fists clenched, faces flushed. The tension in the air was thick, and Clara knew from experience that things could escalate quickly. But both men were too heated to listen, anger pulling them closer to the edge. Clara held her breath. Each time she saw James act as sheriff, it struck her how brave he was. To step into the fray, to bring order where chaos threatened, he was more than just a man behind a badge. He was a protector. With a swift swipe of her broom, she turned to the gathering crowd, her voice loud. "Please, let's not ruin this evening." For a moment, the room fell silent. Clara's words echoed like a call to reason. James caught her eye, a flicker of gratitude crossing his face. Maybe, just maybe, she had more power than she thought. Eventually, the tension thawed. The men backed down, disappointment budding against the desire for peace. The laughter returned, slowly washing over the saloon like a warm tide, and Clara felt a wave of relief sweep through her. James made his way back to her, pride illuminating his features. "You handled that well, Clara." She shrugged, a smile growing on her lips. "It also takes a little grace," he replied, looking at her like he saw something she hadn't realized was there. The The connection they shared tightened around her heart once again, and she was both terrified and exhilarated. Later that night, after the chaos had settled, James approached her at the bar, a drink in hand. He asked, his smile warm and inviting. Clara raised her glass, feeling the fire in her belly ignite again. The weight of the day slipped away, leaving behind nothing but the lightness of joy. And to dancing with unexpected partners, he added, his eyes sparkling. They clinked glasses, the sound echoing throughout the saloon. As the evening wore on, they exchanged stories, laughter spilling into the night air. Clara felt a pull toward him, like a gentle tide inviting her into deeper waters. But as the clock on the wall ticked away the hours, reality loomed in the back of her mind. She was just a saloon girl, and he was Sheriff James Riley. How could a man like him ever truly notice her? With each passing moment, an emotional wall built inside her, threatening to spill over. She tried to push her fears aside, reminding herself of the dance, the laughter, the connection. And yet doubt slinked around her heart like a shadow. Suddenly the doors swung open. A gust of wind swept through the saloon, and the atmosphere shifted once again. A rugged figure stepped inside, his face harsh and intimidating. The mood in the room changed, tension coiled tighter. The stranger called, his voice thick with menace. Clara's heart sank. She sensed trouble brewing in the air, a darkness that settled in like an unwelcome guest. James straightened, the easy camaraderie draining from his face. "Lance," he replied, keeping his voice calm. "I want you out of my way," Lance sneered, taking a step forward. The crowd around them sensed danger. Clara felt her body tense, her instincts screaming. James held his ground, posture strong. Lance chuckled darkly, and it sent a shiver down Clara's spine. "You think you're so tough with that badge?" Before Clara could process what was happening, Lance lunged forward. The room erupted into chaos. She ducked behind the bar, heart pounding wildly as chairs toppled and people shouted. James was moving quickly, his hands raising, trying to de-escalate the chaos. But she could see the tension in his shoulders, could see the weight of his responsibility pressing down on him. With quick thinking, she reached for a bottle of whiskey, tossing it through the air like a projectile. It shattered against the far wall, and for just a moment, everyone paused. She shouted, her voice cutting through the clamor. The tension hung in the air, thick like fog, until finally someone stepped in backup for James. The room shifted again, the power shifting toward peace. It took strength and resolve to bring the brawl to a close. Minutes later, as the dust settled and the adrenaline faded, Clara caught James's eye again. Breathless but strong, she could see respect, admiration, and something deeper shimmering in his gaze. "Clara," he said, stepping close, urgency in his tone. Her heart stuttered. In that moment, something shifted. Clara felt the weight of her fears unraveling. Maybe she could be more than just a saloon girl. She had just made a difference, and she knew it. James held her gaze, the connection between them crackling with unexpressed emotions. "You're right," he replied softly. Just as the night had a rhythm, so did the beating of their hearts. Clara lined in, the world falling away again. Maybe, just maybe, they could meet in the middle, not as sheriff and saloon girl, but as two people daring to connect beyond their roles. With the moonlight spilling through the windows, illuminating their faces, Clara felt a sense of hope bloom in her chest. Tonight had shown her the truth. She was more than the chores she did, more than the shadows of her past. As they stood there, the saloon now a backdrop of laughter and cheer, Clara knew that her life was shifting. Under the watchful gaze of the moon, she took a step toward James, feeling the allure of new beginnings swirling around her like the dust in the air. And as the music began to play again, heralding another dance, Clara felt ready to embrace whatever tomorrow might bring. The saloon door swung open with a crash that reverberated through the room, causing every head to turn. Clara, mid-sweep, barely glanced up from the floorboards, her broom moving almost on autopilot. A sudden chill filled the air, matched only by the tension in the conversations around her. She sensed a storm brewing, but the bustling saloon demanded her attention. That's when he entered, the sheriff. Dressed in a weathered coat and a hat that shadowed his striking blue eyes, Sheriff James Riley strolled in like he owned the place. But tonight there was something different about him, as if he stood on the edge of a personal reckoning. Clara felt her heartbeat quicken. She remembered the first time she noticed him. The way he commanded respect, the way the townsfolk quieted down when he walked by was magnetic, but this was different. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. As he stepped further inside, the whispers faded. His gaze swept across the saloon like a searchlight, and when those blue eyes landed on Clara, a jolt shot through her. There was a flicker of recognition there, something deeper, something unsaid. She straightened her back, wondering why it felt important to make a good impression while doing a mundane task. But before she could dwell on it, he marched across the creaking floorboards and stopped in front of her. "Clara," he said, his voice deep, carrying a weight that demanded attention. She looked up, surprised he knew her name. Clara blinked, not entirely sure she had heard him right. "I'm asking you to dance," he said, a smirk playing at the corners of his lips. Just like that, the world around them faded. The cacophony of laughter and clinking glasses dimmed into the background. She repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. A quiet ember sparked inside her. No one had ever asked her to dance, not in this place, not anywhere. She was just a saloon girl, a hardworking woman who cleaned up after the revelers, yet here he was offering her a moment of light. He prodded, tilting his head slightly, an invitation in his eyes. Around them, the other patrons went about their revelries, but Clara was lost in that gaze. She felt a tugging at her heart, a longing that danced just out of reach, but just as quickly as it surfaced, the doubts flooded in. She had never danced in front of anyone, not like this. What would the townsfolk think? Before she could overthink, an instinct shot through her. Just for a moment, she finally said, her voice suddenly firm. He extended his hand, and she took it, feeling warmth radiate from his strong grip. As they moved toward the center of the saloon, Clara's stomach fluttered with anticipation. The music kicked up from the piano, a lively tune that beckoned them to join. Clara found herself stepping closer to him, the rhythm swirling around them. For a moment she lost herself in the music and the moment. His movements were confident and his presence was magnetic, yet beneath that newfound confidence, Clara felt a wave of insecurity crashing down. But then he spun her around, laughing, and the insecurities melted away like snow. When she looked into his eyes, she saw a world she had never known, a world filled with possibilities. "You're a natural," he exclaimed as they twirled. Clara laughed out loud, and suddenly the weight of her daily life took a backseat. A few moments slipped by that felt like lifetimes, but the spell wasn't meant to last. Just as she spun around, caught up in his presence, the atmosphere shifted. It was palpable. Suddenly the atmosphere cracked like ice beneath their feet. The saloon door burst open again, this time revealing a group of rowdy men. Clara felt the tension creep back in like an uninvited shadow. The group stumbled inside, their hollers cutting through the laughter like a knife. She could see the darkness in their eyes. James' expression changed in an instant. The lightness of their dance faded as he took a step back, assessing the situation. Clara followed his gaze, instinctively gripping his hand tighter. The laughter turned to whispers and eyes darted from the sheriff to the new arrivals. "Look who it is," one of the men slurred, stepping forward. The lawman dancing with a pretty little thing. Laughter rang out bitter and sharp as more men from the group joined in, emboldened by the bravado of their leader. Clara's heart sank as she felt the weight of their bitterness lodge in her throat. "Enough," James said, his voice calm but authoritative. "Oh, but trouble seems to find you, Sheriff," the man shot back, taking another step forward. The air thickened with hostility. Clara could see what this meant for him and for her. She stepped slightly closer, ready to stand by his side, a brave decision kindled by the earlier connection they had shared. The leader of the group laughed again, an ugly sound. James straightened, his demeanor hardening, and as fists clenched and the air crackled, Clara felt herself holding her breath. Would this be the moment everything fell apart? She looked into James's eyes again, searching for reassurance, some sign that everything would be okay. With quick thinking born of the urgency of the moment, Clara turned to the group, her voice firm. "This isn't a place for violence." The saloon fell silent as all eyes turned to her. A woman standing up in this moment had never happened, not with such tension brewing. James glanced at her, surprise flicking across his expression. The leader of the men scoffed, but the resolve in Clara's voice held steady. "You don't have to listen to him or act tough." For a heartbeat, the world stood still. James looked at her with new admiration. Perhaps she was stronger than she had ever given herself credit for. But would they listen? The burly man hesitated, as if weighing her words. And in that instant, time folded in on itself, holding the breath of an entire saloon. "Let's go," he grumbled finally, turning away with a dismissive wave. The tension snapped, releasing the collective breath. As the men stomped out, voices buzzed back to life, laughter returned, the music resumed. Clara's heart raced, a mixture of relief and disbelief pulsing through her veins. James turned to her, eyes brighter, a smile playing on his lips. "Just speaking the truth," she replied, trying to catch her breath. He was looking at her in a way that made her feel seen, truly seen for the first time. Clara felt a flush of warmth spread across her cheeks, the spark of connection growing stronger. Could she really let go of the doubts that had held her back for so long? But the evening wasn't done. As the music picked back up and couples began to take to the dance floor again, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. "You know," James said, pulling her back toward him, "I never really take the time to dance." She grinned, feeling bold again. "I'm game." "Such a fast learner," he teased, taking her hand. As they resumed their dance, Clara felt lighter as they moved together, blending into a world where laughter mended hearts and shadows faded into the corners. In that swirling rhythm, she found freedom to let go, to simply be. Finally, as the evening wore on, James leaned in closer. Clara tilted her head, heart racing with curiosity. "I've never met anyone like you," he said, his voice low and sincere. "You stood up today and it was impressive." Her heart warmed at his words. He echoed, his eyes searching hers. In that moment, everything shifted again. Each word held weight. It was more than a compliment. It was the recognition of strength and vulnerability, a dance of emotions much deeper than the two of them on the floor. "Thank you," she whispered, feeling a swell of emotions. As another song played, they lost themselves again in the dance, moving in unison with the music and each other. Clara felt the barriers of her past begin to crack, unearthing a part of herself she had kept hidden, brave, bold, capable. As the night drew to a close, Clara found herself spinning under James's hand again, the world around them blurring into a dream. He caught her as she stumbled, his grip firm and steady. The room darkened around them, but she no longer felt fatigue, she felt alive. When the final notes faded and the audience began to disperse, something unspoken lingered in the air between them. They stood close, lost in a moment that seemed to stretch forever. It was as if the universe had conspired to bring them here to this saloon on this night. And in that lingering silence, Clara's heart thundered as James leaned in, his breath warm. "Can I take you out tomorrow?" Clara blinked, the reality of his words washing over her like a new dawn, her breath caught in her throat and hope intertwined with fear. "I'd like that," she said finally, her voice steady. As they stepped outside into the cool night air, everything felt different. The world beyond the saloon seemed brighter, fuller. Clara felt a new chapter unfolding. She was more than just a sweeping girl in the shadows. She was experiencing life and connection with each stumble and each dance. With each step, she realized this was only the beginning. As she walked beside James, a warm glow filled her heart, and she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be, sweeping her life into a beautiful, vibrant dance. The saloon door banged open with a loud thud, startling Clara as she swept the floor. Dust danced in the air as sunlight streamed in, illuminating the chaotic scene. The lively chatter and laughter of patrons faded briefly, replaced by an electric tension. Clara looked up, her heart racing. A rugged man stood in the doorway, Sheriff James Riley. His broad shoulders filled the entrance, and a confident aura surrounded him. He was a figure of authority, and in a town where danger lurked behind every corner, he was a beacon of safety. God, he was handsome, but tonight there was something different about him, something she couldn't quite place. As he stepped inside, the ruckus resumed, but Clara felt the charged moment wrap around them like a fog. She'd watched him from afar as he moved through town, a man defined by duty, by responsibility, by a sense of justice. But seeing him now, there was an intensity in his gaze, one that zeroed in on her like a spotlight. His voice cut through the noise, strong and unexpected. Her name echoed in the saloon, and for a heartbeat the world faded away. She blinked. "Put down that broom and come dance with me," he said, a playful grin lighting up his face. Clara froze, her broom mid-sweep. What was happening? His invitation hung in the air like a challenge, and her instincts battled between surprise and discomfort. The saloon was her world. She was the one who cleaned up after the town's wild nights. She didn't dance, but as she stood there, heart pounding, she could almost feel the rhythm of the music playing softly in the background. It was as if he could see the longing hidden deep within her, a longing for something beyond this dusty old room. "Just for a minute," she managed to say, surprising herself. James extended his hand, a bold gesture, and in that moment Clara felt the weight of her hesitation start to lift. She put down her broom, the sound of its bristles scraping against the wood fading as she reached out to him. His hand felt warm, strong, and she couldn't help but notice how the touch sent a shiver down her spine. The crowd parted for them, a makeshift dance floor materializing as patrons watched in anticipation, whispering among themselves. Laughter would often spill from their lips, but now they were silent, eyes glued to the sheriff and the saloon girl. Clara stepped into the open space with James, the energy between them charged and electric. He pulled her close, and she felt the world around them begin to blur. The lively tunes surged, and Clara's heart raced with a mixture of excitement and nerves. With each step, she found herself moving in sync with him, a dance they hadn't practiced, yet somehow their movements fell into place. "You're a natural," James said as he twirled her around, and she laughed, surprised at the sparkle in his eyes. But then, just as quickly, the air shifted. The door burst open again, and a group of rough-looking men stumbled in, shattering their moment like glass. Clara's stomach dropped, and she could see the trouble etched across James's face. "Looks like the night just got interesting," one of the newcomers jeered, his voice dripping with contempt. The festive atmosphere evaporated, tension replacing laughter. Clara's heart raced as she stepped back, instinctively distancing herself from the disturbance. James, though, held his ground, his authoritative presence noticeable even among the unruly crowd. "Gentlemen, there's no trouble to find here," he said, voice steady but tinged with urgency. The leader of the group sneered, swaggering closer. His eyes darted around the room, settling on Clara. "And you found it, sweetheart." Clara shivered at his words, anger and fear swirling inside her. It was hard to shake the feeling that this was about more than just a dance. James's demeanor changed, and she could see the fire behind his eyes, the determination to protect those he cared for, even if it put him in danger. "Let's keep this civil, boys," he said, voice firm but calm. But the tension only heightened. The group closed in, the atmosphere thickening like a storm cloud. Clara felt trapped, the laughter and joy of moments before dissolving into an ominous silence. The leader taunted, laughter dripping from his words like poison. Clara squeezed James's hand, feeling the warmth dissipate. He shifted, standing even taller, filled with righteous anger. The saloon had always been a refuge from the harsh realities of life outside its doors, but now it felt like a cage filled with predators. "Enough," James said, his voice cutting through the escalating tension. "You have no business here." A chuckle rippled through the group, mocking James's command. Clara's heart raced, a cocktail of fear and adrenaline coursing through her. She glanced around the room, but all she saw were faces frozen in uncertainty. Just when she thought despair would take hold of her, something shifted inside. The courage she had found in dancing surged again, fierce and bright. With a voice that rang out clear, she stepped forward. "We don't want any trouble." Surprise rippled through the crowd, and for a brief moment the men hesitated. Their bravado faltered, just enough for Clara to seize the moment. She looked squarely at the leader, matching his intensity with her own. Truth washed over her. She was more than just a saloon girl. She was part of this community. "Everyone's just looking for a good time. Don't ruin it," she urged, her voice steady. The leader's expression darkened, but the other men shifted uneasily. Clara's heart thumped in her chest. Would this work? Would they listen? A moment stretched, then like a dam bursting, laughter erupted from the back of the room, piercing through the tension. It was enough to break the spell. The group started to back off, uncertainty replacing aggression as the crowd rallied around her words. "Let's get out of here," the leader grumbled, his bravado slipping. As they stumbled back out into the night, Clara could feel the weight lift, the oppressive air lightening like a balloon released into the sky. James turned to her, all written across his face. "Clara, that was, I can't even put it into words," he breathed, disbelief swirling in his eyes. "I just spoke the truth," she replied, heart pounding but the taste of triumph sweet on her tongue. His admiration washed over her like sunshine, warmth enveloping her spirit. "You're more than I ever expected," he said, his voice low and earnest. "You stood strong in the face of danger." As music began to filter back into the saloon, inviting laughter and chatter to rise once more, Clara felt an ember ignite in her. She had faced down those men not as a saloon worker but as herself. "Let's finish that dance," James said, his hand offering her a way back into that moment. She hesitated only for a heartbeat before taking his hand again. They moved back to the center of the saloon, where the atmosphere had shifted from fear to exhilaration. She felt the rhythm return, urging them to lose themselves once again in the music. "Thank you for being brave," he said softly, his voice filled with sincerity. "I couldn't just stand by and let them ruin the night," she replied, catching his gaze. In that moment, she felt seen in a way she never had before. As the night wore on, Clara felt a rush of confidence surge. Each step of the dance felt like a step toward herself, the woman she wanted to be, the life she craved beyond this saloon. Yes, she was still a cleaning woman, still performing the day-to-day tasks, but that evening she had shown herself what she was capable of. With every twirl, Clara let the concerns of her past slip away. She could feel the energy of the crowd surrounding them, laughter and joy sparking, igniting the possibility of a new beginning. Time flew, the music shifted, changing the tempo from lively to slow, and Clara found herself wrapped in his arms, swaying like the rhythm of the saloon felt alive. She asked, playful curiosity threading her tone. "Wherever you want," he replied, his eyes sparkling. "You're the one who showed the way tonight, that bravery." Clara felt the warmth spread through her. Here was a man who understood. "That sounds like a deal," he chuckled. The music softened and Clara lost herself in the moment. This dance wasn't just about the steps, it was about finding a place where she belonged. The connection between them deepened, a bridge forming across uncharted waters. When the last notes of the night faded and the saloon began to empty, the air was filled with a lingering sense of hope. Clara stood by James, their fingers intertwined, a thread of connection that felt stronger than anything she'd known before. There was a sense of unspoken promise in the air, and Clara knew that this night had awakened something within her. She wasn't just a girl sweeping floors, she was a woman capable of courage, capable of change. James asked, his voice low and earnest, "Not just a dance?" Clara's heart soared. "Yes," she breathed, excitement bubbling within her. As they stepped outside into the cool night, everything felt different. The world beyond the saloon shimmered with possibilities. Clara took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of fresh air, freedom twinkling on the edges of the horizon. In that moment, she understood her journey wasn't just about sweeping the floor or serving drinks. It was about stepping into the unknown, embracing life's unexpected moments, and daring to dance. A new chapter awaited, filled with laughter, courage, and the warmth of unexpected connections. And as she walked beside James under the moonlight, Clara realized she was exactly where she belonged, no longer in the shadows, but a vibrant part of a dance that was just beginning. Clara was in the rhythm of her work, sweeping the dusty floor of the saloon when the doors swung open. A gust of wind, heavy with the scent of rain and trouble, blew in, rustling her skirts. She looked up, surprised, and her heart skipped a beat. There stood Sheriff James Riley, tall and commanding, his presence slicing through the chatter and laughter like a knife. He scanned the room, and when his gaze landed on her, something flashed in his eyes, something that made her feel seen, truly seen, for the first time. Everyone else faded into a blur, the sounds becoming muffled, just Clara and the sheriff in that moment. He called out, his voice deep and textured, filled with authority that demanded attention. She blinked, unsure he was really speaking to her, the saloon's matron who usually went unnoticed. She managed to say, her voice both curious and shaky. "Put down that broom," he insisted, a playful grin lifting the corners of his mouth. Her heart raced. The saloon was a world of men and whiskey, of raucous laughter and spilled secrets, where she worked tirelessly, hidden in the shadows. She had never danced in front of anyone, but here he was, asking her to step into the light. She croaked, stunned. "Don't keep me waiting," he said, lifting his hand toward her, a beacon of challenge and invitation. The crowd paused, their eyes shifting toward Clara, some whispering, some chuckling at the audacity of the sheriff's request. She felt a mix of embarrassment and a longing that clawed at her insides. Could she really do this? Would they laugh at her? Before she could talk herself out of it, she set the broom aside. The soft scratch of the bristles against the wood faded away, and she reached for his hand. The moment their fingers intertwined sent fluttering excitement racing beneath her skin. As they stepped into the center of the room, Clara's heart thudded in rhythm with the lively piano music that started to play. The other patrons resumed their conversations, but their attention lingered on the two of them, a sheriff and a saloon girl spinning together in an unexpected dance. With a twirl, James pulled her close, and she caught a whiff of the cedarwood scent that clung to him. It felt like a shield, a promise that she wasn't alone under the curious gaze of the townsfolk. They moved together, the world around her faded, and for the first time she felt alive, truly alive. "See. You're a natural," he said, a hint of laugh lines crinkling around his eyes. But before she could enjoy the moment, a loud crash sounded from the far side of the saloon. A group of rough-looking men had just barged in, shattering the merriment. Clara's heart dropped, and she turned slightly, instinctively seeking James's reassurance. His expression had hardened, the playfulness replaced by a determined glare. She asked, trying to keep her tone light, even as dread pooled in her stomach. "Not even close," he replied, voice low. The newcomers were a ragtag bunch, with scruffy beards and ragged clothes that smelled of sweat and smoke. Their laughter rang hollow, echoing through the saloon like a warning shot. The tension in the air became palpable, thick like the dust accumulating on the floor. "Hey, Sheriff," one of them taunted, swaggering forward, fists clenched and brimming with hostility. James subtly moved closer to Clara, an instinct to protect her rising within him. "You boys need to leave," he said, his voice steady but firm. "Trouble's what we're good at," the leader replied, grinning as if the idea of chaos invigorated him. She could see the tension radiating from James. He exuded calm, the kind you'd find in a forest just before a storm. But Clara's heart raced, a primal urge to flee tugging at her instincts. Would they dare to challenge him, to threaten her? James replied, a fire flickering in his eyes. The room held its breath. The quiet was deafening. Clara's mind raced. She had watched fights break out in the saloon before, seen how quickly once merry faces turned to fury. She had always remained a bystander, cleaning the debris after men turned on each other, but tonight felt different. Then, unexpectedly, something ignited inside her. She was tired of being invisible, tired of being a ghost in the background. Clenching her fists, she stepped forward to stand beside James, heart pounding. "You're wrong," she called out, her voice trembling but resolute. "We're all just looking for a good time." Silence fell. The men hesitated, confusion flickering across their faces. Clara felt the eyes of the crowd shift towards her, disbelief mingling with admiration. Maybe they sensed it too, that spark of bravery, the defiance of expected roles. James glanced at her, surprise etched into his features. "That little dance you put on, it won't hold against men like us," the leader finally sneered, but it was as if a tide had shifted. Clara could feel the collective energy in the room begin to turn. The other patrons began murmuring encouragement, small cheers breaking out from the corners. Someone shouted. In that moment, the leader's bravado deflated like an old balloon. He stumbled back, glancing nervously at his friends as they exchanged uncertain looks. One of them finally exclaimed, and with that they retreated, the tension evaporating as quickly as it had arrived. The saloon erupted into applause and cheers, laughter spilling from lips that had been tight with unease moments before. Clara turned to James, her heart racing. "You were amazing," he said, admiration shining in his blue eyes, a warmth spreading in the pit of her stomach. "I just spoke the truth," she replied, still in disbelief at the courage she had felt, like she had stepped into a version of herself she didn't know existed. "And it was incredible," he added with a grin. He stepped closer, their breaths mingling. The music resumed, lively notes weaving through the room, coaxing the crowd back into the rhythm of celebration. And just like that, Clara found herself being pulled back to dance, the fear melting away, replaced by an exhilarating rush. As they spun back onto the makeshift dance floor, Clara felt a surge of strength. The confidence she had uncovered was real, a wellspring she hadn't known lived within her. She called out, laughter bubbling from her lips as he twirled her around. They moved in a whirlwind, clapping and spinning amid the joyful atmosphere. And in that moment, being just a saloon girl felt like a title worth holding. The light in James's eyes made her feel beautiful, as if her worth was not only tied to her labor. She was becoming part of something, no longer merely sweeping the floors, but participating in the fabric of the saloon, of the town, of life itself. As the evening wore on, silence returned, the music fading out as the crowd slowly dispersed. Clara and James found themselves lingering, the warmth between them tangible. "Thank you for stealing the night away from those men," he said, brushing a stray hair behind her ear. "It felt good to stand up for myself for once." "I've always watched, never joined," she replied, a bit of vulnerability peeking through her bravado. "Sometimes all it takes is one step," James said, his voice low and reassuring. Clara felt a swell of emotions, pride swirling within her. She had danced with the sheriff that night, and she had stepped out of her comfort zone. But beyond that, she had faced her fears, confronted oppression with her voice, and danced her way into a new chapter of herself. The stars twinkled outside, the cool night air wrapping around them like a comforting embrace. He ventured, meeting her eyes. "Anything," she replied, feeling the warmth of possibility pulse between them. "Will you join me for dinner tomorrow, just the two of us? We can talk more." Clara's heart fluttered. A real dinner with the sheriff? Yes, she breathed, excitement mixing with disbelief. With certainty taking root deep within her, she realized this would be more than just another day. It would be a chance to explore life beyond the saloon, to see where bravery could take her. As they stepped outside into the moonlit street, she laughed, the weight of doubt forgot. She had danced and faced danger, and now she was stepping into the unknown, leaving behind the girl who only swept and served. The future felt as bright as the stars above them, full of laughter and hope. Clara knew she had entered a new phase of her life, one filled with possibility and new beginnings. And as she walked beside the sheriff, her heart light, she embraced the adventure that awaited. She was no longer just Clara, the girl who swept the saloon. She was a woman ready to dance with life. Clara was sweeping the saloon when she heard the door slam open, and in walked a storm. Sheriff James Riley, tall and commanding, took a single step inside, shaking rain from his hat. The atmosphere shifted instantly, the din of laughter and clinking glasses falling into a hushed reverence. Every eye turned toward him, the kind of attention that reverberated with a mix of respect and dread. Clara held her broom tightly, her heart racing at the sight of him. She had seen him patrolling the streets, but tonight he carried an aura that drew people in like a magnet. She had spent countless evenings in this saloon, watching the patrons indulge in their vices, but every time the sheriff entered, it felt like the sun breaking over the horizon. Tonight, though, something felt different. The air was thick, charged with an electricity that prickled at her skin. He barked, and the intimacy of her name on his lips sent an unexpected flutter through her. "Sheriff," she replied, surprised he recognized her in the chaos of the room. He said, a laugh dancing in his voice. "You're not here to clean tonight." Clara blinked, taken aback. Dance. In the years she had worked here, no one had ever asked her to step away from her chores like this. What would everyone think? Would they laugh? Yet as she looked into his eyes, she saw a glimmer of something, perhaps hope or the promise of possibility. With a deep breath, Clara set the broom against the wall. It felt like letting go of a weight she didn't know she carried. "Just for a moment," she said, surprising herself. "Just for a moment," he echoed, extending his hand. Her pulse quickened as she took it. The warmth of his grip sent waves of confidence through her as they moved to the makeshift dance floor. Clara felt the rhythm of the piano fill the space between them, a lively tune calling her to let go of inhibitions. As the music flowed around them, she found herself mirroring his movements. He twirled her with an ease that brought laughter bubbling from her lips. The crowd loosened with joy, their earlier tension evaporating in the warmth of their connection. But just as the moment of happiness unfolded, the saloon doors swung open again, and in walked a group of raucous men. Their laughter and bravado crashed against the warmth in the air. Clara's heart sank as she recognized them, the rougher crowd from the outskirts of town. "Look at that, Sheriff!" shouted the leader, a man with a scruffy beard and a threatening smile. James's demeanor shifted instantly. The playful glint in his eyes faded, replaced by a hard-edged focus. "You boys need to leave," he replied, his voice low but filled with authority. "Or what?" the leader sneered, stepping closer. Clara felt a wave of panic swell inside her. James remained unflinching, though she could sense the tension tightening in his muscles, prepared to defend what he cared about most. "Leave now and no one gets hurt," he said, his tone warning yet calm. "Aw, come on, Sheriff, don't ruin our fun." Another man chimed in, laughter erupting again, but it only fueled James's resolve. Clara's breath quickened, and instinctively she stepped closer to James, wanting to lend her support. It was as if standing beside him could anchor her fears. In that moment, she felt something shift within her. She called out, surprising herself. The laughter faltered for a split second. People in the saloon turned to look, their expressions curious and uncertain. Could her voice actually sway the tide? Clara's heart raced as she held her ground. The leader scowled, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his eyes as he glanced back at his friends. Then James stepped forward, facing the group squarely. What she said. Anger and bravado clashed in the air, the atmosphere thickened. Clara glanced at James, who stood tall, muscles taut and ready. Tension vibrated around them like a coiled spring, ready to snap. Suddenly, her mind flashed back to the stories she had heard about how it only took one brave soul to stand up to fear. Emboldened, she stepped further into the light. "Let's just enjoy this night together." The leader's eyes flared with anger, but the uncertainty in the room began to turn the tide. Clara could feel the crowd shifting, murmuring in agreement with her. Tension ebbed slightly, the pressure slowly releasing. She added a small smile, tugging at her lips. And with that, the air shifted again, and the group of men retreated slightly. They were still standing their ground, but now a flicker of vulnerability peeked through their bravado. The piano continued to play, a light-hearted tune spiraling around the saloon, coaxing more laughter, pushing back the fear like the sun breaking through a thunderstorm. Clara's heart soared. She had done something. "No one wants trouble," the leader finally muttered, looking back at his group, their uncertainty growing. The dynamic had shifted. One of the men grumbled something unintelligible, and as a collective they turned on their heels, leaving the saloon in a huff. As they exited, light returned to the room, laughter reverberating through the air once more. Clara felt the rush of victory wash over her. She turned back to James, her heart pounding with adrenaline. "Together," he said, admiration sparkling in his eyes. "You stood up to them." The tension that had momentarily gripped the saloon relaxed as the crowd erupted into applause, cheers echoing off the wooden walls. Clara felt a flush rise to her cheeks. "I just spoke the truth," she said, disbelief mixing with a surge of pride. "You spoke courage," James corrected, his voice earnest, "and it was remarkable, but don't think for a second that you're only the saloon girl." Heat blossomed in her chest. In a world where she often felt unseen, his acknowledgement felt like a beacon cutting through fog. As the music started again, the two of them moved back to the dance floor, the night reigniting with energy. Clara felt alive, exhilarated by the moment, the night, and the man beside her. She teased, knowing there would be stories told long after this evening had passed. "Only when a brave woman stands beside me," he replied, spinning her once more, laughter ringing like bells between them. Danced together, unaware of the world outside the saloon. The notes floated through the air, wrapping around them like a warm cloak. Clara began to lose herself in the rhythm, overwhelmed by the sense of belonging she had long wished for. Every twirl was a reminder of the strength inside her. She had faced danger, joined the dance of life, and discovered something more than her daily grind. Each laugh echoed the freedom she felt in stepping out of the shadows. Time slipped away, and slowly the crowd began to thin. Clara enjoyed every moment, every glance from James. With each step into the night, she felt ever more alive, connecting to something deeper, something transcendent. As the last notes faded from the piano, the saloon shifted back into focus, revealing a more intimate setting. Clara and James stood close, the space between them electric, filled with unspoken words. James stepped forward, his eyes meeting Clara's. He asked, his tone both serious and hopeful. She echoed, astonished. "Yes, just the two of us. I want to get to know the woman who stood up to danger tonight," he said, sincerity radiating from him. Clara's breath caught in her throat. "I'd like that," she managed, her heart swelling with possibilities. Stepping outside into the cool evening air, Clara felt a weight lift. This wasn't just another day in the life of a saloon girl, it was a doorway into something new. As they walked side by side beneath the starlit sky, everything felt different. "The world feels bigger tonight," she mused, glancing at James. "It does," he replied, his voice deep and soothing. As they strolled down the street, Clara felt the pull of hope surge within her. She had faced fears, seized a moment, and stood tall. She was no longer merely sweeping the saloon. She was stepping into her power, her voice finding its way out from the depths of her heart. With each step beside the sheriff, she realized that life could be filled with laughter, connection, and even dance. Under the watchful gaze of the stars, she felt reborn, ready for whatever the future held. Her heart thudded in her chest, not from fear, but from excitement and anticipation. Tomorrow would bring a new adventure, one where she wouldn't shy away from stepping into the light. She was a woman with a voice, and now she was finally ready to use it. Clara was sweeping the saloon when a crash from the saloon door made her heart leap. In walked Sheriff James Riley, the wind swirling around him like a dramatic entrance from a tale too grand for their dusty little town. He stood there tall and broad, eyes scanning the room, and she felt the raucous conversations fade away, replaced by a hush of anticipation. The sheriff was a figure of authority, a man known for keeping the peace, but tonight there was something different in his stride. She could feel it in her bones, a certain tension that radiated the kind of energy that could either spark joy or ignite a fire. He called, his voice booming across the saloon. Every head turned, and for a moment it felt like the entire world centered on her. She hesitated, the broom stilled in her hand. "Put down that broom." Clara's heart raced. This was a first. No one had ever asked her to dance. She was just the girl who swept the floor and served drinks, and here he was asking her to step away from her duties. She managed to reply, feeling her cheeks flush. James grinned, his smile breaking the tension in the air. "You heard me." It's a celebration tonight. Part of her longed to accept, to step out from behind the shadows and into the spotlight. But another part, the cautious part, held her back. What would people think? Just for a few minutes, she finally said, taking a brave step into the unknown. He extended his hand, and Clara took it, feeling the warmth of his grip. The moment their fingers entwined felt electric, a promise of an adventure she hadn't known she was yearning for. As they crossed to the center of the saloon, Clara felt every eye on them, a mix of curiosity and admiration. The music began to play, a lively jig that filled the room with a rhythmic pulse. James pulled her closer, and she felt a wave of strength wash over her. He twirled her around, and laughter bubbled up from deep within, unexpected and pure. The saloon transformed around her, the dusty floor and worn tables fading away. All that existed was this dance, this moment. But as the music swelled, the atmosphere shifted. The saloon door crashed open again, and a group of rough-looking men staggered in, the laughter that had filled the room turning to whispers of concern. Clara's heart sank. She recognized them from the fringes of town, the kind of men that could turn an evening bright into something dark and dangerous. James's expression hardened, the playfulness vanishing from his face. Clara instinctively took a step back, her heart thumping louder with every glance exchanged between the men and the sheriff. The leader scoffed, swaggering forward with a group of equally menacing friends at his heels. "Gentlemen," James said, his voice steady, but Clara could hear an underlying tension. "You need to leave." As he spoke, Clara could feel the heat rising in her chest. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, brushing past James, who looked at her in surprise. "No one wants trouble." The leader raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. His laughter echoed mockingly, igniting a spark of anger within Clara. Clara shot back, surprising herself. She could feel the eyes of the saloon on her now, and each whispered word felt like a push. "Clara, step back," James said, but she shook her head, standing tall. The crowd around her seemed to tense, waiting to see how this would unfold. Would a confrontation break out? The leader taunted, leaning closer, attempting to intimidate her. "I'd rather dance with the sheriff than with a coward," she shot back, her voice stronger than she felt. Clara felt the tension shift slightly. The men hesitated, their laughter dying in their throats, uncertainty creeping into their faces. "Leave now and there won't be any trouble," James said again, his tone shifting, turning authoritative. As he spoke, Clara noticed him standing taller, muscles taut, the protector revealing himself amidst the chaos. Something inside Clara stirred. She hadn't come this far to back down. "You can't just walk in here and ruin everyone's evening," she urged, her voice gaining strength. For a moment, it felt like time slowed as the energy in the room shifted. The leader blinked, taken aback. The other men exchanged glances, a flicker of hesitation dancing in their eyes. "Maybe I don't need to dance with the likes of you," Clara continued, feeling emboldened, her heart racing. The leader's expression hardened, but now the crowd was turning against him. "Let's just go," one of his friends muttered, edging backward as the tension continued to melt. The leader grumbled something incoherent and finally turned on his heel, shoving through the door. The rest of them followed, albeit reluctantly, the atmosphere of intimidation leaving with them. The saloon erupted into cheers, patrons clapping and whistling in celebration of the spontaneous display. Clara felt her pulse racing, a rush of adrenaline flooding her system. James said, stepping closer, awe shining in his eyes. "I just did what felt right," she managed, feeling a mixture of disbelief and pride swell within her. "Sometimes that's all it takes," he replied, and for a moment everything felt possible. The music started up again, this time louder and more lively than before. Clara couldn't believe what had just happened. She hadn't just fought back against those men, she did it alongside the sheriff. The moment propelled her into something new, awakening a sense of purpose deep in her soul. As they drifted back to the makeshift dance floor, the atmosphere crackled with life once more. This time, Clara was no longer just working, she was thriving. James asked, taking her hand and leading her back into the rhythm of the dance. "I believe we were just beginning," she replied, a smile breaking across her face. They swayed and twirled, each movement pushing the shadows back into the corners of the saloon. Clara never expected to find such joy in the twirling skirts as laughter rang out. For once, she felt like a part of the light instead of the darkness that brushed against her every day. As the night continued, Clara found herself lost in a world that felt magical. Every twirl, every twinkling gaze shared between her and James filled her with a warmth she had long desired. She felt more than just a girl sweeping floors. She was becoming herself, full of courage, laughter, and strength. Then, as the hour grew late and the crowd began to thin, Clara and James found themselves standing amidst the aftermath of joy. The saloon, once filled with roaring voices, was winding down to whispers and softer laughter. "You were incredible tonight," James said, looking at her with genuine admiration. Clara felt her cheeks warm. "It just felt right," she admitted, a sense of disbelief washing over her. "Sometimes," James started, his gaze steady, "it takes one person to make a difference." She nodded, taking his words to heart, feeling empowered by the compliment. It felt as if a fire had ignited deep within her, illuminating paths she had never considered before. Asked suddenly, his tone serious but laced with excitement. "I'd like to take you somewhere nice, away from here." The request surprised her, sending butterflies fluttering in her stomach. "Out of here?" She could hardly believe it. "Yes, just us," he affirmed, hope shining in his eyes. "Yes," she responded, the word tasting sweet on her tongue. With that, Clara took a moment to breathe in the night around her. The stars above twinkled like a million tiny promises, each one a whisper of possibility. She felt alive, vibrant in a way she had never experienced. As they stepped outside into the cool air, she felt the night wrap around her like a warm embrace. "I wouldn't have guessed it either," he laughed, the sound easy and warm. The moonlight reflected in his eyes, and Clara realized that maybe they weren't just dancing in the saloon. Maybe, just maybe, they were both stepping into something greater, casting off the roles they had been assigned. Tomorrow would hold more than just dinner. It would be an exploration of possibility, where Clara could step beyond the sweeping brush and pave her own path. It was a chance to embrace her voice, and it was exhilarating. James asked, breaking her reverie. "Absolutely," she replied, her heart soaring. As they meandered down the empty street, the anticipation bubbled between them, woven together by laughter, newfound courage, and an electric connection. Clara felt whole, as if she had found a piece of herself that had been lost in the routine of life. With each step, she could feel the weight of the past lifting, revealing a future that sparkled like the night sky above her. She had swept the saloon truly, but by standing for herself, she had also swept away the dust of doubt. Tomorrow would be a new beginning, and as she walked beside James, excitement electrified the air. Clara was ready to dance through life, not just in the saloon, but everywhere. She was ready for adventure, and it all began with a single dance. Clara was sweeping the saloon floor, lost in thought, when the door swung open with a mighty crash. The rush of cold air blew through the room, sending a shiver up her spine. Every patron turned to see who dared to intrude, and in walked Sheriff James Riley, his presence commanding attention like a clap of thunder on a clear day. He shook the rain from his hat, and for an electrifying moment, the ambience changed. Clara was used to the dull conversations of patrons, the clinking of glasses, and the low hum of laughter. Tonight, however, a charge buzzed in the air. Something felt different. She sensed it deep in her bones. His voice broke through the murmurs, and her heart raced at the sound of her name. She looked up, surprised that he even knew her name. She replied, a mix of curiosity and nervousness washing over her. "Put down that broom," he instructed, a glint of mischief sparkling in his icy blue eyes. Clara couldn't help but blink in disbelief. "Dance here in front of everyone? You heard me," James insisted, gesturing for her to join him. The night is still young. Her heart was pounding in her chest. She felt something tugging at her, a desperate wish to step beyond the mundane reality of being just a saloon girl, a worker lost in the serpentine hallways of life. Everyone watched, whispering amongst themselves. What would they think? But as she looked into his eyes, something shifted. Perhaps it was the bravery she often fantasized about but rarely felt. With a resolute inhale, Clara set the broom aside. "All right, just for a moment," she said, surprising herself with the boldness in her voice. James extended a hand, and she felt the warmth radiating from him. Clasping his hand, she let him lead her to the small wooden dance floor at the center of the saloon. The crowd parted, murmuring with a mix of excitement and curiosity. The lively music floated through the air, beckoning them into a vibrant waltz. Clara felt like a sprightly deer, hesitant yet hopeful. As they began to sway together, she felt something awaken inside, a rhythm she didn't know she had, a spark of joy that surged through her veins. "See," James laughed, twirling her around, and for the first time in a long while, Clara felt a wave of exhilaration wash over her. The crowd cheered, and her laughter melded with their happy shouts. It felt intoxicating, liberating, as if she had shed the weight of her daily life. But just as the evening took on a perfect glow, the saloon doors swung open again. The laughter faded, tension creeping in like a fog. A group of rough men entered, their presence ominous and unwelcome. Clara recognized them immediately. They often lurked on the fringes of town, brimming with bravado and mischief. The leader barked, his voice thick with derision. James's expression shifted in an instant. The playful glimmer in his eyes dimmed, replaced by a fierce resolve. "You boys need to leave," he said, firm and unwavering. Clara felt panic rise in her throat. The music had halted, the atmosphere turned dark and heavy. The crowd held its breath, waiting to see what would unfold. The leader sneered, approaching them with a swagger that made Clara's heart pound hard against her ribs. "Clara, step back," James urged, his body tense and poised for confrontation. But Clara stood her ground, defiance flooding her veins. She called out, surprising even herself. The leader narrowed his eyes, momentarily taken aback. The tension in the room thickened. Clara could feel the unsteady pulse of the crowd, the crackling electricity hanging in the air. He taunted, inching closer. Clara's heart raced, an instinctual fire igniting within her. She shouted, her voice rising above the growing chaos. The men exchanged glances, frustration etched on their faces. They were clearly not used to being challenged. "Let's see if you can talk your way out of this," the leader sneered. Clara felt James shift beside her, ready to protect her, but she wouldn't back down. "You're nothing but bullies. Maybe you should just stick to sweeping floors," another man piped up, laughter dripping from his words. But the crowd began to buzz with discontent, voices murmuring in support of Clara. Someone shouted, and the tide began to turn. James's voice boomed, filling the space with authority. The leader hesitated, the swagger slipping from his posture. For a moment it seemed he was weighing his options, caught between bravado and the weight of the crowd's disapproval. Clara's heart pounded, desperate hope unfurling inside her. One of his friends urged, backing away as the tension in the room shifted. Clara held her breath as the leader finally turned, frustration grimacing on his face. They all shuffled out, leaving behind the remnants of their threat, and the saloon erupted into cheers and applause. She turned to James, her heart racing. He looked at her with admiration in his eyes. "You stood up to them, Clara." The elation surged through her, flooding her senses. I felt free, she admitted, astonished by her own courage. The crowd slowly returned to their merriment, laughter echoing off the walls. James took her hand again and they resumed their dance as if the earlier chaos had never happened. The melody flowed like honey and Clara found herself spinning, twirling in the light of their victory. He said, his smile infectious. She replied, laughing, "It just came out. It takes guts to stand up like that, especially with someone like me at your side," he replied. Those words struck a chord deep within her. Clara felt a warmth spread through her, as if the truth of his compliment were wrapping around her like a blanket. "Well, you're a lot more than that," James insisted, his eyes searching hers. As the night wore on, Clara felt herself step into her own skin more fully. Each smile exchanged, each twirl shared, pushed her doubts aside. They spent the rest of the evening laughing and dancing, hearts light and spirits soaring. Eventually, as the last notes of the piano faded into the night, the crowd thinned, the cheers faded, and the saloon cast a softer glow. As Clara and James stood side by side, a sense of calm enveloped them. James ventured, breaking the comfortable silence. "Of course," Clara replied, meeting his gaze. "Will you go dinner with me tomorrow?" he asked, his tone serious. Shocked, Clara blinked. "Dinner? Yes. I want to get to know the woman who just took a stand," he affirmed, hope sparkling in his eyes. "Yes, I'd like that," she said, the word tumbling from her lips before she realized how wonderful it felt. As they stepped outside into the cool night air, Clara felt the world shift around her. The stars twinkled brightly above, illuminating the path before them like 1,000 little promises. She could feel a sense of renewal, like she had been reborn from the ashes of a life once filled with doubts. "What we did back there feels different," she said, glancing sideways at James as they walked. "It was different," he agreed, sliding his hand into hers. The gesture took her breath away, each heartbeat echoing in her ears. "You showed me tonight you're brave and strong. I never thought I had it in me," Clara admitted, marveling at her own transformation. Clara nodded, feeling those words sink into her, planting seeds of self-worth she had long forgotten. Tomorrow held something exciting, a new chapter blossoming in her life. She was ready for whatever awaited her. As they walked beneath the starry sky, Clara knew that tonight was only the beginning. She would no longer remain a quiet girl in the background, sweeping the floors and fading into the shadows. She was stepping into the light, arms wide open, ready to dance her way through life. With the sheriff beside her, the future felt bright and filled with possibilities, each step forward fueled by the warmth of hope and courage. She was alive, discovering who she truly was, and for the first time, she felt free. Clara was sweeping the saloon when the door burst open with a force that echoed through the room, scattering dust into motes of swirling light. The laughter and chatter died down as the townspeople turned to look. In walked Sheriff James Riley, rain-soaked and brooding like a tempest ready to change everything. There was an energy in the air, a charged current that made Clara's heart race as he stepped into her world. For a moment, she held the broom steady, catching her breath. James was a figure of authority, muscular and understated, with an air of confidence that drew eyes and hushed whispers. He was the protector of their small town, the man who understood justice, and the man who on occasion caught Clara's eye as he strolled past. But tonight he looked different. Tension was etched on his face as if he carried a weight too heavy for a man to bear alone. His voice cut through the silence. "Put that broom down." Her heart lurched, caught between disbelief and excitement. She stuttered, blushing. In her whole life, no one had ever asked her to dance, especially not the sheriff. The patrons leaned in, curiosity glittering in their eyes, waiting to see what she would do next. There was a moment of indecision, where the world around her blurred and the music seemed to dim. Her upcoming answer could either shatter whatever spell he cast or lead her into an uncharted territory she had only ever dreamed of. "Yes, just for a moment," she replied, surprising even herself with newfound bravery. As they clasped hands, she felt an electric thrill zip through her. He led her into the center of the saloon, and the atmosphere shifted. The weight of the moment hung thick in the air. The lively piano began to play, filling the space with an enticing melody that begged them to let go. James spun her around, and before she could fully comprehend what was happening, Clara felt the rhythm pulse through her body. Laughter bubbled up inside her, uninhibited and pure. He cheered, his smile radiant, his eyes sparkling like the stars emerging in the darkened sky outside. She twirled under his arms, feeling giddy, an escape from the monotony of sweeping floors and pouring drinks. Clara felt like she floated, weightless, and for the first time, she reveled in being the center of attention. But just as the music swelled enthusiastically, the saloon door boomed open again, this time with men who radiated chaos, a group known for revelry that quickly turned into destruction. The laughter that echoed moments ago faded, replaced by whispers of unease. Clara's pulse quickened as the rough men swaggered in, their wild energy permeating the room like a stench. "Look who we have here," the leader taunted, his voice thick with mockery. James's demeanor shifted instantly, tension tightening his shoulders, transforming his playful, carefree attitude into something serious. "This isn't the place for you," he said, his tone calm but steely. Clara felt her stomach twist. She stepped closer to James, an instinctual desire to support him. Everything she had witnessed over the years warned her that trouble was about to break loose. "Come on, Sheriff," laughed the leader, stepping closer in a threatening manner. Clara could see the hope drain from the room as patrons looked away, now too frightened to catch James's eye. "Leave," James urged again, a firmness in his voice that made it clear he would not tolerate their antics, but the men advanced, emboldened by liquor and bravado. Clara squeezed James's hand as faith mingled with fear. Would this turn into another night of chaos? One of them shouted, pointing a finger at Clara, laughter ringing sharp through the air. Clara blurted out, the words spilling from her lips before she realized what she was saying. James warned, but there was a strength in her voice now, a realization that she was tired of hiding. The air practically crackled with tension, and she could feel the crowd leaning in, anticipating the outcome. Would they side with the sheriff? The leader retorted, his bravado faltering slightly. Before she knew it, the room held its collective breath. "You think you can just intimidate everyone?" Clara shouted, surprising even herself again. There it was, the voice she didn't know she possessed. The murmurs in the crowd became louder, voices rising in agreement with her boldness. James's eyes widened, pride and concern mixed in his gaze as he subtly shifted closer to her. Overwhelmed, the leader stiffened. He spat, frowning at the crowd's reaction. "Maybe you need to leave," Clara said, feeling a rush of empowerment. James placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her while fueling her courage to forge ahead. "You don't want to make any more mistakes tonight," he warned the intruders. The leader hesitated before finally stepping back, disbelief etched across his features. He shouted at his crew, turning on his heel and ushering them back out the door. As the door swung closed behind them, the room erupted into cheers. Clara was shocked, her hands trembling with newfound adrenaline and triumph. They had done it, they'd sent them packing. James exclaimed, his eyes alight with admiration. I just spoke what was in my heart," she stammered, disbelief still swimming in her thoughts. The crowd continued to clap and celebrate, the air filling with warmth and excitement once again. The band jumped back into a lively tune, and James turned back to Clara, pulling her toward the dance floor again. He laughed, taking her hand firmly. As they danced, Clara felt the weight of her worries lift with every twirl, every echo of laughter ringing in her ears. She lost herself in the rhythm, losing track of time. She was free from the cycle of drudgery she had known for so long. Who would have thought the sheriff would invite her to dance? As the music played on, she felt more alive than ever, but her mind couldn't help but drift back to the confrontation. Had she really found her voice? Would it hold weight in her everyday life, or was it just a fleeting spark of courage? The crowd gradually thinned as patrons retired for the evening, weary from the earlier tension but drain replaced with relief. Slowly, the saloon transformed, settling into a more intimate setting. Clara found herself standing there beside James, the vibrant energy around them softening into something quietly profound. "Tonight was something special," James remarked, his voice low and sincere. Admiration in his eyes made Clara's heart flutter. "It felt good to stand up for myself," she admitted, her cheeks warming at the memory of their victorious moment. "It's not just about tonight," he said, his gaze unwavering. Clara felt the truth of his words wash over her like a wave. It was like he had peeled back layers she didn't even know existed. She asked softly. James shook his head, moving a fraction closer. "You're so much more than that. You have a voice worthy of being heard." That moment cemented something within Clara. She was more than a girl living in the shadows. She was a warrior willing to face her fears head-on. She asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. "They won't," James assured her, his eyes steady and kind. "What you did today, that takes courage, Clara. Remember this feeling." Just then, the saloon door swung open again, this time revealing a figure silhouetted against the dim light outside. An uneasy tension settled in the air as the figure stepped forward. Clara squinted, her heart pounding in sudden apprehension. A group of men clad in dark clothing stormed in, their intentions clear as they moved with purpose like wolves forming a pack. Clara's breath caught in her throat. It was as if shadows had descended upon them once more, snuffing out the warmth of the night. One of the men shouted, swaggering toward James. James instinctively stepped in front of Clara, his demeanor hardening. He demanded, firm and unyielding. "Just a little chat," the leader sneered, glancing at Clara. Clara felt the weight of his gaze, a visceral reminder of how quickly things could shift. The warmth they had just built began to slip away, replaced by a chilling realization that the night was far from over. "Walk away now," James warned, tension crackling like summer lightning. The man laughed, a sinister sound. "And what if I don't?" In that moment, Clara's stomach twisted. She realized she might have to face another fight, another battle with those who threatened to blacken the life she had just begun to reclaim. She whispered, fear creeping in. "Stay behind me," he urged, his eyes fixed on the intruders. But uncertainty gripped her heart. Had tonight truly empowered her, or would the shadows take over once more? As the men advanced, Clara felt the weight of the world crush down on her. But they weren't backing down. Clara could feel tension rising like a storm, and she clutched the edge of the table beside her. What would she do? Would she let fear take hold again, allow the darkness to swallow her newfound strength? Or would she step forward, reclaim her voice, and fight for the light she had barely begun to see? Just then the sheriff reached for his holster and Clara caught her breath, bracing for whatever chaos was about to erupt. She could feel the storm brewing, a clash of wills that echoed through her very soul. And in that moment, as the masked man approached with an unyielding glare, she realized she had a decision to make. Would she remain in the shadows, or would she embrace the power that had surfaced within her?